Welcome to Bristol Bay Native Corporation's podcast series, Mug Up with BBNC. Mug Up is a term commonly used in the Bristol Bay region, specifically in the fishing community. It refers to getting together with friends and family for a casual gathering over a warm cup of coffee or tea. It's all about sharing stories, experiences, and connecting with one another. In this podcast, hosted by BBNC's communications team, you'll hear from BBNC employees, community leaders, and passionate individuals who are engaged in BBNC's mission of enriching our Native way of life. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mug Up with BBNC. My name is Anise, and with me is Kayla. Today, we have a very special guest. It's Orville Lind. Orville is joining us virtually, and he is a Bristol Bay elder, and he will be sharing all about his life and growing up in Chignik Lake, his life as an artist, and the wisdom that's been passed down to him through generations. So welcome, Orville. It's so good to have you on the podcast.
First of all, Guyana, thank you for having me on today's podcast. Chamai, everyone. My name is Orville Lind. I am the son of Fred and Annie Lind from Chignik, the village of Chignik on the Alaska Peninsula. And my Appa and Amma were Dora and Fred Lindholm. I have 8 brothers and 3 sisters. My wife and I have 44 years, have 4 sons. We're praying for 44 more. We have 7 grandchildren. And from 2 to 16 years old, and thankfully they keep me in shape, my body and soul. I have a native name given to me when I was 17 years old, and it was given to me from my auntie, who was Kumyahak, which means eagle. That's another chapter. Excited to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to sharing.
You are a blessed man, Orville, with all your family.
Absolutely.
So, Orville, I was fortunate enough last year to visit Chignik Lake. It's so beautiful. So tell us a little bit about growing up in Chignik Lake.
Oh, if I had any place to do over again, it would be my home village of Chignik. So the native name is actually Chignik, which means strong winds. Some people will say big winds, but we know strong and big are kind of the same in our native way back in the village. And we had a population of about 125 to 130 people, I remember. And we relied mostly on the resources around there, fishing and hunting. And my father was a village chief there for many years. He founded the village of Chignik Lake. We used to live at the Chignik Lagoon, which is about, I believe, 8 miles south of the lakes, out into the ocean body out there. And so in the summers, they would fish, and in the winters, they would just hunt and trap. And finding that the lakes provided more resources where you didn't have to go very far because the lake was full of salmon. We love salmon every which way. And so it was very, very good for us just to settle in there and then travel down the river to the Chignik Lagoon for fishing in the summertime. Oh, it was a great time growing up. We had so many in our family. We had several things that we always did daily. And growing up, we were taught to take care of our elders first. Mm-hmm. So we had great opportunities to learn and grow from our elders teaching us everything. And I make it kind of a joke because a lot of times we were taught without words, as many will relate to that uncle and grandma and grandpa, they would just look at something and look at us, and then we knew what to do. Mm-hmm. There was little words used as many words used today, for sure. So there was a big difference. We grew up in a very, I think, peaceful environment, a very an environment that provided us with everything we needed, transportation. One of the things I like to teach at culture camps is the elements that we depended on. Living in Chignik was pretty awesome because we had a lot of wind coming through there because it was a pass, mountains on both sides of the lake. So wind, we relied to go upriver during the tide going out to help us go either way. And the tides would be big enough, strong enough to push us up the river. Hunting on both sides of the mountains, even onto the Bristol Bay side. So we were really, really blessed with a lot of resources we could depend on. And we are so thankful for that. And that's one of the elders, they taught us how to be so thankful. They were the ones that were deep-rooted. They were really planted and totally committed to teaching us why we were put on this earth. There was a purpose, to take care of the land, the waters, everything. Back in the day, seeing such great resources around us, learning how to care for them. I'm sure you've heard before that most cultures in Alaska, their spirit, once you connect to their spirits and have respect for them, in respect in return, they will give themselves to you. Mm-hmm. And that's how we are able to harvest them. Even today, it still is being taught in culture camps, and it's a valuable traditional teachings to the students today. Maybe we need to go back to that traditional value. I think we're missing a few links by going high technology, which is good in some ways if you know how to use it. Myself, I am a low-tech man in a high-tech world, but I love my grandchildren because they're teaching Appa and Grandma all kinds of cool things.
Awesome.
It was great growing up in Chignik Lake. And then we had other communities right next to us, Chignik Lagoon and Chignik Bay. So we had relatives all up and down the coast. We had a lot of natural exercises because we were always doing things, chopping wood, packing buckets of water. All of that was very, very good for you and very healthy. So I miss that kind of life, but I at least try to teach how valuable those teachings were to the students today.
Do you have any fond memories of the activities that you do growing up?
Oh, I got so many. But the one that remains strong in my mind and in my heart is observation skills. Mm-hmm. We were just told when we were young just to be quiet, listen, and watch what our uncles did because they were the ones that mostly took us out. Dad was also busy, making sure the people there were taken care of. He was very firm, but he was fair in leading his people in the village. And everybody always told us that. But one of the strongest things I remember is observation skills, that even sometimes I remember my mom waking me up, says, Uncle's taking you out today. You need to go down there and get ready. So I would go down and see my uncle, and we'd go out. We went for a walk, and he'd have this stick. And the stick, he would point to the animal tracks in the mud. Mm-hmm. And I would look at him, and he would say, Kanichik, which means raven print, or Kanilak, fox print, Gaganak, wolf print, or Dagugak, bear prints. And so, as we go through this little trip from the village to where we would harvest red salmon, we would learn along the way.
Wow. And
we used to have this little hill we went through. We'd climb up this little hill, and he'd just say, motion with his head or his hand just to sit, and wouldn't say a word. And then we would just watch. Mm-hmm. And within minutes, we would see bears. We'd see families, a mother and cubs. We'd see boars come through. We'd see the mergansers and the mallards in the river. And a lot of that has inspired my artwork just by looking down onto a river with salmon and birds. And so we would look and learn. I remember one time a male bear got too close to the mother and her cubs, and she just let out a roar. I will never forget it because it was the first time I had heard. I was about 6 years old, and it's the first time I ever heard a bear roar so loud. Warned the male bear to stay away from her kids. And I'm thinking, wow, I know Mom hollered at a couple people, and thinking, wow. That's really cool. We're just like those animals. And I even heard my grandma say that you just look at them, look at what they do. A lot of times a bull caribou will lead the herd, and she would say, that's just like your dad, your chief, leading the people. Or a bird, a waterfowl, fly by and see that bird there's like a leader too, leading all his flock. And so there was a lot of relationships, traditional values that really stuck to us young people when we were growing up, in an environment that we really had to work together too. Not one person would work alone. We always worked together. And as we did that, we would teach each other. And our elders they were so committed, to teaching the youth, and they were very dedicated. Again, I think that we learned right away that we depend on the resource. It depends on us. We're all one people. We learn from each other. We help each other. We really all need each other. And so there was a lot of traditional values growing up in a village lifestyle.
It sounds like you had a lot of people around you that bestowed wisdom upon you and have made you the person that you are. That's awesome. Something that I had read, there's an article the National Wildlife Service put out about you, and they interviewed you, and they mentioned that you were a village chief at 18. Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about that?
I went to high school, and here in Anchorage at East High, graduated. And I remember my grandmother was so proud that I graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. She said, not many of us get to go that far. I was feeling pretty proud of myself. And she wanted to hear my stories about everything, about my foster parents, about the food, because she had never, ever gone to a big city. She's lived in a village all her life. And she never, went to a hospital. She was that healthy. And it's like, wow, when you really think about it, we were really healthy people back in the village, all the good foods we had. And so I talked a lot. I showed the kids, what I learned in school. Grandma says, your uncle's going to step down being a chief of this village. She said, I think you should go. I think you should lead us. And whatever Grandma says, you got to do. And so I didn't even have to tell many people. Mm-hmm. They sent out a piece of paper. I guess there was another person running. I got most of the votes, and so I became chief of Chignik Lake at the age of 18. My father, before me, was chief for, good Lord, for many years, mm-hmm. for many, many years. It was a real honor and a privilege to lead my village, at least for a year. Wow. Now, during that year, I realized how much work it is being a chief, mm-hmm. How much work it's being I tried to be a good leader, and it was really hard to keep track of everything. It was like the only piece I could have was playing my music, and so I would play my music, and pretty soon it was like, you know what? There's a couple other kids that really like to play music. So 18 is when I also started a local band in the village. My brother played. He inspired me to play guitar.
Thank you for sharing that.
You mentioned that you're an artist. Have you always been an artist, or was it taught? And we want to know because your last name is Lind, and all the Linds, I feel like, have some sort of artistic blood in them, whether, they're a musician or whether they're a carver. You guys all just have these amazing artistic abilities. So tell us a little bit about it.
As you've heard me in village life, we are taught nothing ever gets by an elder who has time to grab you and teach you something. As you know, history teaches us that if we spend enough time with something, it sort of imprints our minds, our brains. And so, for example, my dad used to love to hunt and fish, and so salmon images stuck in my head. I remember one time, my older brother, who was old enough to get a BB gun, he said that he's going to teach him how to shoot, and I was too young to get one. So I wanted to watch, and Dad drew on a cardboard a caribou, and it really looked like a caribou, and I thought, man, that's so cool. And then he drew a bear, and he drew a moose. And so he was actually, to me, the first artist that drew the animals pretty well. And so I started to draw that. But my uncles were also very talented. Uncle Bill also carved and drew. Of course, you heard of probably my Uncle Peter. He's still with us mm-hmm. today. He's 94 and had a lot of experience and very much inspired by some of his artwork. But again, there's a lot to say about artists who do many forms of art, and it really talks about how their lives evolved. I do a lot of salmon, I do a lot of birds. As you know, my native name is Eagle, and so I love doing birds also. So as we grow up, we want to teach our children what the animal looks like or what we're going for. I remember a couple hunters came into the village, and my dad was taking them out to hunt bear. And so my dad was telling them about the bear size, what we're looking for, and it was a fall hunt, so the bears were real big, and then a lot of times they fight a lot, so their hide's not very good. And so he would tell them all the stories about the bear and what to look for in the tracks. He had a way of looking at the tracks and saying, this is a good bear, this is a good bear, this is a good size we need. So he could tell the size of looking at tracks along the way. When you're teaching someone, you get this picture in your mind of, oh, wow, so this track here tells me all kinds of stories. Tells me how big he is, how heavy he is, which way he's going, if there's other bears around. He could tell a female track with cubs. It's easy to see because you have smaller tracks there. So, yeah, a lot of things that you could learn just from following an animal. When you come to a place where you kind of miss that, I guess, you want to recreate a picture of it or draw from the pictures that stuck in your mind and put it on canvas or wood or ivory, baleen, whatever it is. There's a lot of joy that comes with that. There's a lot of, I think, fulfillment when you finish the art piece. You completed something really good, you think, and then you hear from another artist saying that was really good. So I think there's a lot of feeling of success when people like your artwork. You continue to capture part of your life on canvas or your artwork, and I think that kind of helps you love your life a little more, I think, because I certainly do. I love my artwork, love to do it, and especially if it makes someone really happy.
Aw. What's your favorite kind of art medium?
Well, I used to love to carve until I got carpal tunnel. And so I went to doing lighter stuff, carving soapstone, easier stuff to do. I switched to painting, mostly painting now, and I think my custom paintings are becoming really popular. The most popular, I think, is a painting I have called Together, and it's a young man and a wife. He's got a young hunting visor on, and they're all together. You have to look at it to find all the creatures that are within and surrounding the man and woman. And I think it tells a story of when we finally honor and respect all the spirits, all the living spirits. Anything that's living has a spirit, and we include plants. We include the sun, the air. When we have the right honor and respect, we come together. And we become successful in our lives. So that's probably my favorite one. I love to do salmon, but I also love, I've been away from fishing a long time, so I love to do boats too. So that's another popular order is for their boats to be painted.
Speaking of salmon painting, you haven't said tie-dye. To give you some perspective to our audience, we did tie-dye at Young Adult Culture Camp, and Orville made tie-dye salmon on his shirt, and it was amazing. I was so impressed by your skills, Orville.
I appreciate that. I wasn't too happy with it, but it was the first time I did tie-dye, and I was thinking, oh man, I could have done this. I know how to do this now. And so, again, as an artist, one of the greatest skills that you can learn is learn from your mistakes. And it kind of fine-tunes you for the next one. So I hope I get to do it again.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'd buy one.
Is there anywhere that people can go to look at your artwork or learn more?
Well, yeah, I have a website on Facebook called Orville's Originals, and it has most of the type of art I do, paintings, carvings, scrimshaw, and for the native artwork that I do is usually from a story or some part of my journey. I have now taken that out of my head into the canvas or wood or whatever I'm carving or painting on. Was once told a story a long time ago when I was young, and this guy was from Kodiak. He had made friends with another carver up north, and this carver up north said he had some people come to his village and wanted to buy his carvings, which were walrus ivory carvings, and he asked him how much was the carving, and the carver actually tried to gift it to him, and He said, no, I want to give you money for it. And the carver said, well, I don't need money. I have everything I have. I don't need any money. I don't use money. And it kind of impacted me because it's, wow, they don't even need money to live up there. And really, when I thought about it, in our village, the only thing I guess we had to pay for, Dad had to pay for, was the salt, flour, and sugar, and all this, the main staples to get from the cannery. And then, of course, we salted everything, birds, fish, bear, whatever it was. We kind of corned and salted everything that we had. And so just to hear that carver say that he didn't need the money was like, wow, they were rich without money.
Oh, I love that. You were an elder at the BBNC Young Adult Culture Camp, and you taught the culture camp kiddos to make stone lamps. I say kiddos, but they're young adults. They're like 18 to, in their later 20s.
Yeah.
Right.
But can you talk about stone lamps and how they're used?
I can tell you from what I know. I'm sure there's probably a lot of anthropologists know a whole bunch more than I do. But I'll tell you, on my culture side, that the stories we heard, I know my grandma, Katya, who came from actually Katmai, Nova Rupta, back in 1912, would move after the volcano. They moved to Perryville. And I grew up in Perryville. I was born in Chignik, but I kind of grew up in Perryville because my mom was born and raised in Perryville. There was a few stone lamps around, and never really thought of them because they were just part of our lives. Knew how to use one, to light one. We used a lot of seal oil and roots from the grass braided into a wick, and we dried those out. Stuff like that we couldn't touch after we had done because it was part of keeping us warm, lit. I think it was a big deal. When you think about stone lamps, first of all, again, our lives back then, we were taught to not to use so much energy, to conserve our energy during long trips or building something or whatever we wanted to do. And so we got to utilize all the elements around us. The wind to help us, the rain to wash stuff, the sun to dry stuff, and all that stuff. So they were very important to us. And so when you look at the natural indentations on a rock, you don't have to form that rock. The rock's already formed. And so, again, you would be thankful for that. However, there were some lamps that were formed, and those lamps would take some time to do so. Mostly in our area, we use a lot of slate, conglomerate, rocks that you can use a harder rock to form a lamp on the other one. And so you use two rocks to form one lamp. And the lamp meant everything. There were big sizes, there were medium sizes, there were small sizes. The big ones usually for a big place where the families would gather together for prayer, for celebrations. The medium ones were in your home. The smaller lamps were labotics where you would take hunting with you, and then you had this long garment. You would sit and light the lamp inside the garment to keep you nice and warm during the winters when you were trapping or out hunting into winter. So lamps were very valuable. There was nothing to play with. They kept you warm. They also cooked your food. So very valuable. Lamps were very valuable.
So Orville, for our followers who don't know, to give them a better visual, a stone lamp is basically a piece of rock. And what goes inside of it? Is it like a wick and some wax, or how do you light it?
So the stone lamps, first of all, you got to make it very stable. You can't have it rolling around. So again, you have a lamp that's very stable, would fit a flat surface. In the ground where the sod house, you could set it anywhere. Mostly it was set in the middle of the rabra, which is a sod house. And so in that would go seal oil, whale oil. You'd have fat from the caribou or moose or bear. They would render it into a container where it would turn to liquid. Or sometimes they would just use the fat itself. And then the wicks were made from roots of a grass, a ryegrass, or along the banks of the river, you'd find a bunch of roots, and then you learn to dry them out and twine them together and use them as wicks. So those would need tending to. There was a little stick that Grandma used to have that we couldn't touch, her little stick there to move the wick up every time the wick would burn down to the oil. And so you had to tend to it. You had to take care of that lamp, and it was very important.
I've never seen a stone lamp in person, so that is so cool to know that it's made out of real things that you would get from outside or from your your subsistence.
Yeah, again, it was really cool that our village in Chignik was started mid-1930s, and it was built upon an old village, which was about 3,000 years old, according to the anthropologists. And we would find oil lamps, we'd find arrow points, all kinds of stuff, which was really cool. Most of the families down there had found or collected artifacts for many years, and we found out through a project that I and our Fish and Wildlife Service agency anthropologists went there, and we had a dig with the high school students, and they were carbon dated. All the artifacts were carbon dated to about 3,000 years old, and it was pretty cool to see exactly what they were used for. There was a lot of history shared, and kind of put a stamp on, wow, these were our ancestors. Mm-hmm. These were our people, 3,000 years ago, and they ate the same foods we did, so there was a real cool connection with that.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about just the importance of passing on your craft? We talked about your art, and we talked about even you being an elder at Culture Camp. What's the importance of passing on traditions and crafts?
Gosh, I could talk about that forever, because one of the traditional values as we grow up is the passing on of a skill, which especially if you're really good at it. We were always encouraged to become a good tracker so we could teach others to track animals. And we were also, if we were good at throwing spears or bow and arrows, just as playing became part of teaching to the younger kids that were ready to do that. We also, it was very important to talk about our local resources. And for example, an animal, a marine mammal, has a bone that has an indentation on it, and so that part of that bone could be used for a lamp. Marine mammal bones are very solid, they're very hard, and so those would make good spear points. I would be upon some of them to recognize which hunter that belonged to. That was very important. And then for the skin, there would be some drawings on the skin, or they would make clothing, tassels, whatever. The teeth were used also, passing on for tassels or decorations on your regalia, your clothes you were wearing. That represented your family, because a long time ago I was talking to an elder who said, I know that family, they're from so-and-so place, because they wore the same garments. And so when they came together, they knew whose family just by looking at what clothes they were wearing. Mm-hmm. As far as drawing and painting and carving stuff, those were skills that were even taken from a hunt. For example, if a guy went to get a stellar sea lion, a zooic seal, they would carve a seal out of the bone or draw it on the bone. We learned from the hunters as we were young. Again, observation skills were very powerful, and it really depended on how much we spent looking and observing what others were doing. Mm-hmm. As far as lamps, the same thing. I mean, I learned from another lamp carver maker. So teaching and passing on the craft is very valuable. That's how it keeps our cultures alive, whether it's telling stories, drawing, painting, making harvest tools, just everything. It's so important to keep it alive, because that's how we sustain ourselves. That's how we survive. We've been surviving for thousands of years, and it would never happen if we didn't share what we learned.
Well, awesome, Orville. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I feel like we could talk to you for hours, and you have so much wisdom, and it was really nice talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we go?
I guess anything that really means a lot to me is trying to continue to share our cultures, our language, our practices with our ever-evolving environment. We have to change along with that environment, or we'll be left out. I think change is good. I think change begins from the heart, and we personally make our own choices. Unless we choose to make changes within ourselves, nothing changes around us, and then change begins from within. Without a change within, we can't have a change without. And so encourage people to change along with the things that we face in our lives, as long as it's makes us happy, makes us stronger, and makes everything around you better. With changes, we face new adventures and new ideas and new challenges, and hopefully they provide new opportunities. So it's good. Change is good sometimes. Also, that we have to be very open to the new changes around us. Technology, I think it takes us older folks a little time to adjust. But, I think we should be very open to hear people out, because each one of us, I think, is special. Sometimes it can be really difficult to see change in some situations, but I think if we all work together in time and spend time together, it's amazing to me. I love when all the tribes come together, because there's something that happens. Our brains ignite to hear and learn from each other. I think unity is very important, and especially when we have the right attitude, and we need to cultivate that attitude. It just leads us to better things, happier things, and we become powerful, productive, and we move forward. So with that, I love to introduce people to the unknown and encourage and invite to the opportunities that exist out there. And we just have to find ourselves to find them. And I will end with that.
Thank you so much, Orville. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your family's wisdom that's been passed down to you. And that is the end of our episode. Thank you to everyone joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you very much.
We are one Bristol Bay, no matter the distance. From simple reminders of home to traditions and stories passed down through elders. From the salmon that nurture and sustain us to our Bristol Bay roots that ground us. We are connected through this remarkable place and our native way of life. Bristol Bay Native Corporation, always more than a corporation.